2 full years had passed since Joseph had interpreted the dreams of the butler and the baker. This time Pharaoh has a dream. This was his dream: Pharaoh stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. The ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. Therefore, Pharaoh awoke. Pharaoh slept and dreamed a second time. This was his second dream: suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. The 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. Therefore, Pharaoh awoke, and indeed, it was a dream. When morning came, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I remember my faults this day. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both the chief baker, and me, we each had a dream in one night, him, and me. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him of our dreams, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. The dream happened, just as he interpreted it for us. Pharaoh restored me to my office, and he hanged the baker. Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothing, and came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream, to interpret it." Notice how Joseph responds to this statement: he takes no credit at all for being able to interpret dreams. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me, God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine-looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. The gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. When they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. Therefore, I woke. Also, I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came up on one stalk, full and good. Then behold 7 heads, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. The thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. Therefore, I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me." Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years, the dreams are one. The 7 thin and ugly cows, which came up after them, are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. I have spoken this thing to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise. All the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. Therefore, the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe." The dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food will be as a reserve for the land, for the 7 years of famine, which will be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. The advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You should be over my house, and all my people will be ruled according to your word, only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, he clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. Pharaoh had him ride in the second chariot, which he had, and they cried out before him, "Bow the knee." Therefore, Pharaoh set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph an Egyptian name and called him Zaphnath-Paneah. He also gave Joseph as wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Therefore, Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Now, we see here that the fulfillment of Joseph's dreams he had when he was 17 years of age, the dreams about his family, are shortly coming to pass. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So, Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. In the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. Therefore, Joseph gathered up all the food of the fields, which surrounded them. He gathered much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. 2 sons were born to Joseph before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh. He said, "For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." The name of the second son he called Ephraim. For he said, "God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." Joseph married an Egyptian pagan woman. Although he had 2 sons by her, Manasseh and Ephraim, he brought them up to know the one true God. His Egyptian wife worshipped the pagan god Ra, the sun god, but Joseph and his sons worshipped the Almighty God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. His wife probably later became a worshipper of the Lord. The 7 years of plenty, which were in the land of Egypt, ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as God had revealed to Joseph. The famine was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. Therefore, when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, do." The famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. The famine became severe throughout the land of Egypt. Therefore, all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the lands. Now, Jacob sends his sons to Egypt. When he saw that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another? Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." Therefore, Jacob sent his sons to go down to Egypt to buy grain, but he did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared some calamity would befall him. Benjamin is Joseph's little brother by their mother Rachel. She died in childbirth during Benjamin's birth. The sons of Jacob, or Israel as he is called interchangeably, went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he, who sold to all the people of the land. Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. The prophecy was now fulfilled. See how the Lord God used tribulation against Joseph to accomplish his will. Now Joseph will soon get to see his little brother and father again. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but his brothers did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams, which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We all one man's sons, and we are honest men, and your servants are not spies." Nevertheless, Joseph said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." Then Joseph said to them, "It is as I spoke to you, saying you are spies. In this manner, you will be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother, and you will be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you, or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." Therefore, he put them all in prison 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to the prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you will not die." Joseph's brothers did so, and then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear, therefore, this distress has come upon us." Reuben answered them saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen, therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter, and he turned himself away from them and wept. Then he returned to them, and talked with them. He took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Now, Joseph's brothers are returning to Canaan. Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Therefore, they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed for there. As one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was, in the mouth of his sack. Therefore, he said to his brothers, "My money has been restored, and there it is, in my sack." Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" Joseph's brothers went back to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan. They told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man who is lord of the land spoke roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, We are 12 brothers, sons of our father, one is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the lord of the country, said to us, "By this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. Bring your youngest brother to me, so I will know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." It happened as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack, and when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Moreover, Jacob their father said to them, "You have bereaved me, Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Reuben spoke to his father saying, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you, put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." Nevertheless, Jacob said, "My son will not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." Now the famine was severe in the land. It happened, when Israel's family had eaten up the grain, which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little food." Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, You will not see my face unless your brother is with you." Israel said, "Why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you had still another brother?" They said, "The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' Therefore, we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send a lad with me, and we will arise and go that we may live and not die, both we and you and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him, from my hand, you will require him. If I do not bring him back to you, set him before you, and then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned this second time." Their father said to them, "If it must be so, then do this, take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks, perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and arise, go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Israel's sons took the present and Benjamin, and they took double money in their hand, and arose and went down to Egypt a second time. Again, they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Joseph's brothers were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money, which was returned in our sacks the first time, that we are brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us, to take us as slaves with our donkeys." When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house. They said, "O sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened, when we came to the encampment, that we opened our sacks, and there, each man's money was in the mouth of this sack, our money in full weight, so we have brought it back in our hand. Also, we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." The steward said, "Peace be with you, do not be afraid, your God and the God of your fathers has given you treasure in your sacks, I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The man took the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. Then Jacob's sons made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present, which was in their hand, brought it into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. Then Joseph asked them about their well-being, and asked, "Is your father well, the old man, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They answered, "Your servant our father is in good health, he is still alive." They bowed their heads down and prostrate themselves. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" He said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Now Joseph's heart yearned for his brother, so Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. He went into his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself, and said, "Serve the bread." They set Benjamin in a place by himself, Joseph's brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. They sat before Joseph the firstborn according to his birthright and the youngest according to his youth, and the men looked in astonishment at one another. He took servings to his brothers from before him, but Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. Therefore, they drank and were merry with him. Now, after the meal, Joseph commanded the steward of his house to fill his brothers' sacks with food, as much as they could carry, and to put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Joseph also had Benjamin's grain money put back into his sack along with his silver cup. When it was morning, Joseph's brothers were sent away. When they had left the city, and were not yet far off, Joseph had his steward to follow them, overtake them, and accuse them of repaying evil for good. He said to them, "Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, speaking of the silver cup, and with which he indeed practices divination? You have done evil in so doing." Joseph's brothers knew then that God was in some mysterious way dealing with them for their great sin, for they had said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear, therefore, this distress has come upon us." Practicing divinations was totally against the will of God. Joseph did not practice divination. He did not consult the will of the gods of Egypt. He consulted the one true living God, and God was with him. This silver cup must have had some sacred meaning to it, because the Egyptians used the cup to practice divination. Joseph used this cup to further his role in the punishment to his brothers. To steal a divining cup was a crime punishable by death. Joseph was still acting out a role as a stranger to his brothers. Joseph's purpose was to see if his brothers had changed, and that they be led to repentance. Joseph's brothers claimed innocence in stealing the cup. They answered the steward, "Far be it from us that your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money, which we found in the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves." They told the steward if one of them had the cup, he would die, and they in turn would be his Lord's slaves. The steward replied, "Now also let it be according to your words, he with whom it is found will be my slave, and you will be blameless." Then each one speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. The steward began to search from the oldest, Reuben, to the youngest, Benjamin, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. They tore their clothes, each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came back to Joseph's house, and he was still there, they fell down before him on the ground. Joseph said to them, "What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination?" Judah said, "What should we say to my Lord? What should we speak? On the other hand, how should we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants, here we are my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found." Joseph said, "Far be it from me that I should do so, the man in whose hand the cup was found, he will be my slave, and as for you, go up in peace to your father." Judah went near to Joseph and said, "O my lord, please let your servant speak a word in my lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh." My lord asked his servants, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And we said to my lord, "We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him." Then you said to your servants, "Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him," and we said to you, "The lad cannot leave his father, for if he would leave his father would die." Nevertheless, you said, "Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will see my face no more." So it was, when we went up to your servant my father, that we told him the words of my lord, and our father said, "Go back and buy us a little food." We said, "We cannot go down, if our youngest brother is not with us." Then my father said to us, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely, he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you will bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen, when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. Therefore, your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave." We became surety for the lad to my father, saying, "If I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, Please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how can I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father?" Joseph now wants to make himself known to his brothers, but he could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." Therefore, no one stood with him while he made himself known to his brothers. He wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph, does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." They came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years, the famine had been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. Therefore, God sent me before you to preserve posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Now it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God had made me lord of all Egypt, and come down to me, do not tarry. You will dwell in the land of Goshen, and you will be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. Therefore, you will tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you will hurry and bring my father down here." Then Joseph fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and after that, his brothers talked with him. After 2 years of famine, Joseph revealed himself to his brothers. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. It pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. Therefore, Pharaoh said to Joseph, Say to your brothers, Do this, load your animals and depart, go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded, do this, take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives, bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them carts, according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. He sent to his father these things, 10 donkeys loaded with good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father and for the journey. Therefore, he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and he said to them, See that you do not become troubled along the way. Therefore, they went up out of Egypt, and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. They told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. Jacob's heart stood still, because he did not believe them. However, when he saw the carts, which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, It is enough, Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night, and said, I am God, the God of your father, do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. During Jacob's old age, his eyes were so dim that he could not see. This may be the reason that the Lord will have Joseph put his hand on his eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives, in the carts, which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. Therefore, they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants they took with him to Egypt. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2 persons, Manasseh and Ephraim. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.